Government plans further restrictions on smoking in the city. China reportedly considering exempting some U.S. imports from its 125% tariffs. And Trump tells Putin to stop after new Russian attacks on Kyiv. Hello and happy Friday. You're watching TVB News. I'm Melissa Hekalea. In a bid to further regulate smoking in the city, the government plans to implement a blanket ban on e-cigarettes starting next year. No smoking areas will also be expanded. Offenders may be subject to an increased fine of $3,000. Samantha Lee reports.
The Health Bureau is set to submit its proposal for amending the city's smoking regulation law to the Legislative Council next Wednesday. Under the measure, no smoking areas will be expanded to 3 meters from entrances and exits of hospitals, residential care homes, and schools. These areas must also display signs banning smoking. Smoking will also be banned at designated areas with queues containing 2 or more people. These areas include public transport waiting areas, as well as entrances to hospitals, sports and entertainment facilities. Offenders are subject to a fine of $3,000. But the penalty does not pertain to those smoking while walking past the queue. What do residents think about the latest proposal? This man said the matter does not require legislation, noting that it is more of a moral issue.
The government's initiative of stopping the smoking in and around public places is very important because it affects the person who is not smoking at all. And it's really difficult for those people to interact with the guy who is smoking, because most of the time people get hostile and they probably are very angry at people who say don't smoke.
The authorities also revealed that they will instruct the Food and Environmental Hygiene Department to move rubbish bins further away from public transport waiting areas. Regarding long-term measures, the proposal suggested a blanket ban on e-cigarettes and other similar items starting on the 30th of April next year, meaning that they cannot be used in public. Under the first phase of the ban, those found with vapes or heated tobacco products in public places will be subject to a fine of $3,000. The restriction could extend to other areas depending on further consideration. The authorities have noted the implementation of the measure has taken into account certain individuals using e-cigarettes as a method to disguise their consumption of the space oil drug. On the regulation of flavored cigarettes, all flavors apart from mint will be banned starting in the second quarter of 2027. As part of the government's efforts against smuggled cigarettes, duty-paid cigarettes will incorporate special displays starting in the third quarter of this year. The maximum penalty for smuggling illicit cigarettes has also been increased to 7 years imprisonment and a fine of $2 million. Samantha Lee, TVB News.
The government today announced development plans for the Hung Hom waterfront area. The plans outline the transformation of the area into a residential and entertainment landmark for the city. Authorities expect the first phase of the project to be completed in 10 years. Mimo Singai reports.
According to the documents released by the Development Bureau, authorities hope to seize upon the area's geographical advantages covering Hong Kong Station and Hong Kong waterfront and turn it into a new landmark for Hong Kong. The entire developed area will cover 24 hectares, 14 hectares of land and the remaining all water. In the waterfront area, an entertainment and commercial complex will be built on former pier sites. It will feature a shopping mall, 2 hotels and commercial buildings. The top floor of one building will boast a number of attractions for the public, including an observation deck and zip wire ride, also offering a spot for people to enjoy views of Victoria Harbour. Authorities also hope to develop a yacht club with 200 berths at the former pier sites in the west. In the short term, the pier sites will be developed into a leisure centre hosting a variety of activities. The government will launch a 2-month public consultation next Tuesday, hoping to begin formalities by the second half of 2026. Authorities expect the first phase of the project to be completed by 2035, with the second phase set to be finished by 2037. The estimated cost for the entire project is between $10 and $20 billion. Members 9, TVB News.
Multiple measures are being implemented by the hospital authority to handle public hospital incidents. A total of 31 measures are expected to be launched or fully implemented by June this year. The hospital authority set up a review committee on the management of the public hospital system last year. The group proposed 31 measures. The authority's chief executive, Tony Ko, said the measures include establishing a spokesperson team that can deliver messages to the public when something big happens. Ko said that could enhance the trust between hospitals and the public. The hospital authority will also introduce external experts to the review committee, hoping to elevate the quality of its investigations. U.S. President Donald Trump sent a rare rebuke to his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, telling the Kremlin leader to stop after another attack on Ukraine. At least 12 people were reportedly killed and dozens injured as Russia used drones and missiles to hit various parts of Kyiv. The strikes come as Trump revealed that Moscow may be willing to make concessions in a potential peace deal, with the Russian foreign minister saying talks are going in the right direction. Nazvi Karim has more.
Since assuming the presidency, Donald Trump has been seen to be more aligned with the ambitions of Russian President Vladimir Putin than Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky. That was until this post on his Truth Social account. Vladimir, stop was Trump's forthright message, adding that 5,000 soldiers are dying every week. Trump later spoke to reporters at the Oval Office after a meeting with Norwegian leader Jonas Gahr Støre.
I didn't like last night. I wasn't happy with it. And we're in the midst of talking peace, and missiles were fired. And I was not happy with it.
Last night referred to this, drones and missile strikes on various parts of the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, that killed several people and injured dozens of others. Zelensky was in South Africa for talks with President Cyril Ramaphosa. He cut short his visit after the Russian strikes on Kyiv, but before leaving said the attacks show that Russia was not being held to account. Trump disagrees, insisting that Russia is feeling the pressure and would even accept concessions.
Putting a lot of pressure. You don't know what pressure I'm putting on Russia. They're dealing. You have no idea what pressure I'm putting on Russia. We're putting a lot of pressure.
What concessions has Russia offered up thus far to get to the point where you're closer to peace?
Stopping the war, taking the whole country. Pretty big concession.
Russia has maintained that it would not give up the eastern provinces it annexed during the early months of the war, as well as Crimea, which it captured in 2014. Speaking to CBS News on Thursday, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said the effort was moving in the right direction, but some specific points need to be fine-tuned without providing details. Trump had earlier met with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, who said the allies are clear about which country is the aggressor.
So I worked with him for 4 years between 2010 and 2014. I stopped trying to read his mind. We all agree in NATO that Russia is the long-term threat to NATO territory, to the whole of the Euro-Atlantic territory.
Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
U.S. President Donald Trump insists that Washington is currently engaging Beijing in trade talks despite China's earlier claims. Sources say the U.S. will implement its tariff policies on nations that fail to secure a trade agreement with the U.S. in 2 weeks at the earliest. This, as Bloomberg noted, Beijing is considering exempting some U.S. imports from its 125% tariffs. Timothy Lee tells us more.
Amid rising tensions between China and the U.S., a respite could be underway as Bloomberg reported that Beijing is considering to exempt some categories of U.S. imports from tariffs. They include those pertaining to medical supplies and industrial chemicals. As of now, American goods imported to China are subject to tariffs of 125% as a reciprocation of Washington's 145% tariffs on imports from China. This as Beijing reiterated that there are no winners in a trade war, adding that the conflict was provoked by the U.S. and that China is willing to fight to the end. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs stressed no trade talks have taken place between the two parties as of the moment. However, during his meeting with the Norwegian Prime Minister at the White House on Thursday, U.S. President Donald Trump emphasized his nation and China are in the midst of trade negotiations, but refused to share the details.
Can you clarify with whom the U.S. is speaking with China? They're saying it's fake news that trade talks are happening.
Well, they had a meeting this morning, so I can't tell you. It doesn't matter who they is. We may reveal it later, but they had meetings this morning, and we've been meeting with China.
Having announced a surge in tariffs on countries across the world earlier in February, the U.S. president promptly halted the measure just days later to give trade partners 90 days to negotiate a deal, though China was excluded from the temporary relief. But the buffer period may expire sooner than expected. A report from CNN indicated that President Trump may change his stance and restore the tariffs on countries that fail to reach a deal with the U.S. within 2 to 3 weeks. Meanwhile, responding to several Chinese airlines refusing to receive Boeing aircraft, Trump noted on social media that it is just one among many times that China has engaged in a breach of contract with the U.S. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
President Donald Trump has signed an executive order aimed at boosting the deep-sea mining industry. It's his latest attempt to enhance U.S. access to nickel, copper, and other critical minerals used widely across the economy. The order, which Trump signed in private, seeks to jumpstart the mining of both U.S. and international waters as part of a push to offset China's sweeping control of the critical minerals industry. Parts of the Pacific Ocean and elsewhere are estimated to contain large amounts of rocks known as polymetallic nodules filled with the building blocks for electric vehicles and electronics. More than 1 billion metric tons of those nodules are estimated to be in U.S. waters. Extracting them could boost U.S. GDP by $300 billion over 10 years and create 100,000 jobs. Supporters of deep-sea mining say it would lessen the need of large mining operations on land, which are often unpopular with environmental groups. And Donald Trump has talked about looking for ways to interpret the Constitution to give him a possible third term in office. His online store is a step ahead with Trump 2028 merchandise already on sale. Trump's son Eric posted a picture on social media of the president with a Trump 2028 hat selling for $50 US. The 22nd Amendment to the U.S. Constitution says no person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice. But high-profile Trump supporters, such as MAGA podcast host Steve Bannon, say the president should run again. Trump has refused to rule out a third term, saying in an NBC interview in March that there are methods for doing so. The Trump store says buyers of the hat can make a statement by purchasing and wearing it. Franklin D. Roosevelt served more than 2 terms during the Great Depression and World War II before the 22nd Amendment was ratified in the 1950s. Still ahead, Shenzhou 20 astronauts meet up with the Shenzhou 19 crew in space. A stabbing attack in a French high school leaves a student dead and 3 injured. And Russian government measures to encourage childbirth. Welcome back. The 3 astronauts aboard China's Shenzhou 20 spaceship have entered the country's space station and met with the Shenzhou 19 astronaut trio in the early hours of today. The Shenzhou 19 crew started with an in-orbit crew handover after a snack of steaming hot dumplings they'd prepared for the new arrivals. Tracy Furness has more.
The Shenzhou 20 spaceship with mission commander Chen Dong and crew members Chen Zhongrui and Wang Zhe aboard docked with the Tiangong space station's core Tianhe module at 23:49 Beijing time Thursday. At 1:17 a.m. Beijing time, the Shenzhou 19 crew opened the hatch and greeted the new arrivals. The 2 teams took group photos and sent messages to ground staff, while the commanders of the 2 space missions exchanged greetings. Commander of the Shenzhou 19 crew, Tai Shu-zhe, welcomed the new arrivals, mentioning that he and Chen Dong had previously conducted the Shenzhou 14 mission together. The Shenzhou 20 crew thanked their predecessors for their hard work over the past 6 months and said they were looking forward to the handover. The 6 astronauts will live and work together for about 5 days to complete planned tasks. China launched the Shenzhou 20 crewed spaceship from the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center in northwest China on Thursday. 10 minutes after the launch, the Shenzhou 20 spaceship separated from the rocket and entered its designated orbit. Shenzhou 20 is the 35th flight mission of China's manned space program and the 5th crewed mission during the application and development stage of the country's space station. The crew is scheduled to return to the Dongfeng landing site in Inner Mongolia in late October this year. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
In the western French city of Nantes, a 15-year-old boy killed a fellow student and wounded 3 others in a stabbing attack at a high school before he was overpowered by teachers. French media reported the student who died was a girl and the 3 injured students were boys. Teaching staff subdued the attacker at the private Catholic school before law enforcement officials arrived. Students were held inside the school after the midday attack, but allowed to leave in the mid-afternoon under police protection. Dozens of parents waited outside as police and armed military surrounded the area. A classmate said shortly before the attack, the assailant had sent a long email to the school that had an environmental and anti-globalism message, but nothing about an attack. Russia's birth rate fell to a 25-year low last year, prompting the government to implement measures to encourage childbirth, including financial incentives and mortgage benefits that some citizens find appealing. Sakura Ip has more.
These amateur models are well prepared as they participate in a children's fashion show held in a Moscow shopping mall. The stores here cater to children, offering everything from clothing to toys for ages ranging from newborns to teenagers. However, demand is decreasing, with Russia's birth rate declining in recent years, hitting its lowest point in the past quarter century in 2024. In response, the Russian government has taken action. Starting this year, the one-off financial support for families having their first child has increased to 677,000 rubles, equivalent to about 60,000 Hong Kong dollars. For families having the second child, if they haven't had previous support, they can receive 894,000 rubles, roughly 80,000 Hong Kong dollars. Families with children can also benefit from lower mortgage loan interest rate of 6%, compared to the standard rate.
It's a very good start. Maybe it's not enough because, prices, they higher every day. Here it's more stable to have a big family than anywhere else. Now we are more confident.
I would like to have 3 or more. Many girls want to have children, but the problem is that it's tough situation with living situation, apartments and so on, not enough size, and money issue.
According to the data from 2022, Russian women gave birth to an average of 1.42 children. Several regions offer subsidies to pregnant university students of 100,000 rubles, equivalent to about 9,300 Hong Kong dollars. One controversial suggestion from a lawmaker proposed extra marks awarded to pregnant students to incentivize childbirth.
I don't think it's healthy to give more points for students of schools because they obviously aren't of the mature.
According to the Russian government, the Russian population stands to 146 million by 2025. According to the forecast earlier, the population will drop to around 140 million by 2036.
Companies are encouraged to offer flexible working hours to young families. Anna Marchanova, who runs a skincare company, noted that employees with young families are more loyal, motivated and dedicated when given the flexibility to care for their families. Notably, 70% of her workforce is female, with half of them being mothers and 10% having at least 3 children. Last month, the Russian government decided to extend its strategy of action for family and demographic policy until 2036, which includes enhancing healthcare support and education in remote areas. Sakura, TVB News, Moscow.
That's the news. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend.